CDFM study group. Today we are going to be reviewing CDFM Module 3, which will incorporate some of the information you would have already covered in Module 1 and possibly in Module 2, because what you'll find is the information overlaps between all three modules. You can't separate one from the other in some instances. So the way I'm going to do this is more of a question answer. I'll ask questions, give you an opportunity to answer before I give you the answer. Because at this point, once you've gone through the material at least 3 times, you're not going to just be able to just pick up the study guide, read through it, and you're ready to take the test. You have to go through the material at least 3 times, I tell people. You go through it the first time, making notes, actually reading it, understanding what's going on. Even if you don't understand, just read through the material from the front to the back of that module. Then the second time you read through the material, you start making notes to the sides of the pages. I recommend getting a hard copy. That's what I have from the study guide. And then the third time you go through the material, you're focusing on the topic and the notes that you wrote and on the side of that page. That way you would have seen the material numerous times. Repetition, repetition, repetition. I can't stress that enough for you to go through the material. When you get to the study session, like what I'm getting ready to do, is basically how you're going to see the information on the exam. It can come from any direction. So I'll kind of start off slow, asking questions, giving you answers if you don't have the answer. But the idea behind it is I won't tell you which competency area we're in. I'll just ask questions. When I first start off, I'm going to start with the knowledge check. Because the knowledge checks are, okay, they're pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and then I'll get more into the concept of the book. So I'm going to be switching. I have different study material, and if you have not already, I didn't give you my notes that I took out of the book, make sure you send me a separate email so that I can email it to you, or if you're on the Teams, you can also find it in the file section. So I try to keep it updated. But again, I'm a one-man, one-woman show, so sometimes it's not easy to get to that update. Yes, Miss Tina, I see your hands up.
Yes, okay, yeah, I found all of those yesterday in the Teams file, in the group chat in the Teams file. Okay, thank you.
So there's a couple of nuances. I do have individuals, once they take the exams, they kind of give me some feedback on some areas that I probably need to focus on more. So there's a few areas, mainly with the auditing, that questions come up several times, like the phases of the audit. In the book, if you look at it, it looks like there's only 3 phases: plan, review, report. But based on the feedback that I'm getting, it's referencing 4 phases. And then the 5th phase being the auditor recommendation. So we'll go over some little stuff like that. Any questions of me on anything you may have reviewed or covered up to this point, you didn't understand, you want recommendation on how to study, we can get all of that out. Again, this session is being recorded, so whatever question you have might also be beneficial to those who may view this video later. Any questions? Let me get my glasses. All right, let's begin. All right, so all appropriations can be broken down into 3 areas. What are the 3 areas? Every appropriation has what? A specific purpose.
Time, purpose, and amount.
There you go. Purpose, time, and amount. Or you could say time, purpose, and amount. Very systematic. So I like to go in order, so I remember in order. So thank you very much. Purpose, time, and amount. All right. So we talk about purpose, time, and amount. And if you violate those things, you are violating what type of law? What is it called? A rule. If I violate purpose, I violate time or amount. What law am I violating? It's the Anti-Deficiency Act. Act meaning it's a law. So the Anti-Deficiency Act, right? 31 U.S. Code. I'm violating at least one of them. What are the different types of budget authority? Because everything we do with funding, you must have the authority to do it. So what are some different types of budget authority? A, B, C, L, M, N. Appropriations. The B is borrowing authority. C is contract authority. And the L is loan and loan guarantee. M, monetary credits. And the O, LMO, offsetting collections. So A, B, C, L, M, O, offsetting collections, the receipts. Those are your budget authority. What are the different annual appropriations? So there's more than one. So what are the annual appropriations that are available for new obligations only for 1 year?
O&M.
O&M and, so there's more than one. What's the other?
RDT&E for 2-year funding.
Nope, listen to the question.
Oh.
You have several annual appropriations. They're available for new obligations for only 1 year. So I have O&M, and what's the second one? There's two of them. MILPERS. That's where you pay military personnel. So
Okay.
MILPERS and O&M are your annual expense type appropriations. So what I'm doing is I'm using the knowledge check, but I'm not just simply regurgitating the questions and the answers that are there. I'm also trying to dig a little bit deeper on understanding what else goes with that question. So if you're trying to follow me, I won't go word for word. So annual appropriations, MILPERS, O&M, expense type, that means they're available for new obligations once a year or annually. Operations and maintenance is what type of appropriation. So you see the switch is asking the same questions, but in a different way. So I could have said MILPERS and O&M are what types of appropriations?
Annual.
Annual or expense type, if you're asked. Because if you go back to that, I think it's page, what it says 23, it says expense type or annual appropriations. All right, RDT&E is what type of appropriation?
Multi-year.
It's a multi-year. And how many years is it good for new obligations?
2 years.
2 years. That's correct. Let's see, they didn't ask the other one, so I'm going to ask the other one. All right, so we also have procurements. We have shipbuilding, conversion, Navy. We have military construction. Procurement is good for how many years for new obligations?
3 years.
3 years. Shipbuilding, conversion, Navy, which is also a procurement appropriation, is how many
5.
years? 5. And military construction
5
is
years.
5. All right, so along that same line, all appropriations, once they leave that phase 1 or new obligation phase, they enter the expired state. How long does an appropriation stay in the expired state?
5 years.
So that's 5 additional years to the 1, to the 2, 3, the 5, 5 additional years. What things can we do with an appropriations when it's in the expired state? And on the phone line, you can also chime in.
We can make adjustments.
We can make adjustments. So it's either upward or downward adjustments. But you have to already have that contract, that MIPR, that WBS, whatever it is, had to have already been initiated in the previous years, and then you make adjustments. What can you do with those same funds when it's closed? Which is phase 3. Expired, then closed or canceled.
Nothing.
You can do nothing with it. What happens to the money then, or the accountability of the money? Because we don't deal with actual cash in that instance.
Goes back to the treasury.
Goes back to the treasury in the miscellaneous receipts account. Because occasionally you'll see that miscellaneous receipts listed in the study guide. So all of that generated from that one question on the knowledge check. All right, so let's not forget the appropriation that does not expire, because we do have that type of appropriation. What type of appropriation does not expire?
No year?
A no-year appropriation. That's good. What is an example of a no-year appropriation? So that means Congress doesn't have to appropriate their money every year. They just keep rolling around. They charge the customer pays for the item. They charge based on how much it costs them, and the process continues. So what is an example of a no-year appropriation? Go ahead, ma'am.
Working capital fund?
The working capital fund. So anytime you hear no year, associate working capital fund, because I do have individuals come back and said their test was big on working capital funds and no year and what it's for. So what is the goal of a working capital fund? It sounds like it works like a civilian company, right? They take their money, buy the items, put it on the shelf, charge the customer. So what is the difference between a working capital fund and the commercial side? What is the goal of the working capital fund? Government.
To break even.
To break even. That's the key word right there, because it works exactly the same as the civilian side. But the goal of the working capital fund is to break even. And when we discussed that section, I talked about once they look over that trend, and if the trend is consistently that, let's say that I stick with the commissary because everybody's familiar with the commissary as a working capital fund. If the prices, if it looks like the commissary had been earning a profit over the last 2, 3, 4 years, that also tells me that the following year, regardless of how much it costs them to put the items on the shelf, they have to lower their costs to the customer, because it cannot appear that they're consistently earning a profit, because the goal of the working capital fund is to break even. All right, what are the 3 branches of government?
Legislative, executive, and judicial.
Perfect order. Legislative, executive, judicial. What part of the contract addresses the legislative, executive, and judicial? So part of this question is some of the module 1 that overlaps with this part. So the reason for the order Mr. Laura gave, legislative, executive, judicial, it directly aligns with the Constitution. Article 1 deals with legislative, Article 2 deals with the executive, and Article 3 deals with the judicial branch. There we go. So that's why you want to learn the branches that way, so at least you'll know. All right, so what part of the Constitution says that no money can be drawn out of the Treasury unless we have an appropriation law in place?
Article
1, Section 9.
Article 1, Section 9. And I think if not, Module 1 goes Clause 7. They go a little bit further. But Article 1, Section 9 talks about no money can be drawn out the Treasury. So that's the reason the government was shut down if you don't have an appropriation or a continuing resolution. And when you see, so let's say on an exam and you see, okay, Article 1, Section 9, even if you don't remember it, the Article 1 automatically tells you they're talking to the legislative branch. right? Congress. Which law established the House and Senate Budget Committee? That's the easy one because the name of the law is similar to what they created. The Congressional Budget Act of 1974. So some of the laws you're going to need to know. So they threw a few in here. So as far as structure goes, understand that you in Congress, you got the House and the Senate. For every committee, you basically have a House side and a Senate that does the same type of functions. So the Budget Committee was created from this law, and also Congress has its own budget office, Congressional Budget Office, the CBO. So that's what it's saying. All right, in the purpose part of fiscal law, it talked about the necessary expense doctrine. You must ask three questions as you're trying to figure out the right appropriation to use. What are those three questions? So you're asking, is what I'm trying to buy prohibited by law? Is it funded elsewhere? And does it bear a logical relationship to the appropriation I'm trying to use? So the three-part test for the necessary expense doctrine. What are some examples of certifying or accountable individuals? Here we go, accountable officials. Come on, that's the easy one.
Certifying officials.
Okay, certified, right? You caught that. I gave you the answer in my question.
Yeah, you did.
It's like, and you also have like your, what is it, dispersing officers or accountable individuals. So actually, if you think about the people who make that final call to disperse the money, so they're certifying the disbursement, dispersing officers, and departmental accountable officials. What is a temporary appropriation called?
Continuous resolution.
Continuing resolution. What is the guidance under continuing resolution and how we spend funds?
Okay, I'm not looking at my book, so I'm going to try to
Okay.
do the best I can here.
Yeah.
I want to say that the funds have to be used for that specific contract or that specific purpose that they were designated for in that earlier fiscal year.
Okay, I
I
take
may
that.
be partially right on that. Yes, it say for instance, October 1 rolls around, we know budget's not ready, but we're still trying to operate until after February, that second Monday in February. So those monies must be used from that October point up to that February point to continue to operate.
Okay, so I have to have a current contract already in place.
Mhm.
All right, what else? Ms. Soto, you trying to say something?
Yes, no new contracts can be funded. So
Okay.
business as usual, we cannot do like new contracts.
Okay, so
So-
no, so that goes along, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Soto.
No.
Okay, so
That's
that
it.
goes
So-
along with what Ms. Tina is trying to
Yes.
say, is no new contract. I can continue to execute the same level as I was the previous year because I have that contract, I have a pattern, but no new contracts, no new starts. And you also are limited to do what? Right? We want to go TDY, we want to do it all in October. Can we do that if we didn't do it the year prior?
Yes, you can. You can go
But
to
that's
the
an
Y.
exception. What's the normal rule to the rule?
No, you cannot.
So the normal answer is
Is-
no. I mean, people
yes.
do it depending on mission, but
Mhm.
typically the answer is no, because that's really a new start if you didn't do it last year. But mission can dictate. So any of these acts and laws and policies, trust me, there's some exception somewhere where somebody can bypass it. But for the most part, no, you cannot, because you're supposed to stay under the same rate of operation and how you're spending, right? You're limited to that. All right, so let's go back to some structure. Again, I'm going to go all over the place because on the exam, they're going to go all over the place. So you got to be able to pick up on the words. All right, so Congress appropriates the funds. Got the appropriation law. Two things happens once Congress appropriate. What are those two things? Okay, give me one then. What happens once they say, all right, the appropriation law has been signed? There's two things that always happens. What's one thing?
One has to do with treasury.
Okay, one has to do with the Treasury, because you just told me Article 1, Section 9 says I cannot get any money out the Treasury unless I have that appropriation law. So the one thing that happens is the Treasury issuing the Treasury warrant, which is basically a notice. They receive the law has been in place, the accounts are set up, you can start spending. So the Treasury is legal because it's tied to that constitutional law. What is the second thing that happens? I would say more on the administrative side of things. So once the Treasury issues the Treasury warrant, the second thing that happens is OMB begins the apportionment process. And how does that apportionment process look? Does anyone want to take I want to say a stab at it? How does it look? So does OMB just start sending money to the agencies? How does that process work?
Said the agencies have to fill out an SF 186. Way off.
You got the one right.
Oh, 82.
Yes, ma'am. 132.
Okay.
The SF 132. So that's correct. So once Congress appropriate, step one, Treasury issues a Treasury warrant. That's the legal part. The administrative side, I say OMB begins the apportionment process because they're in charge of it. But the agencies like DOD has to fill out a SF 132. It's like saying, okay, Congress approved $1 billion for Department of Defense. Here's my SF 132. I need to draw my money out. So the SF 132 must be submitted how long after the appropriation law has been in place? And this kind of overlaps with module 1 also, and some of 2.
30 days.
So, not 30 days. The
10
agencies.
days.
Okay, here we go. So the agencies have 10 days to fill out the SF 132 and turn it in. And then OMB has 30 days to send them their apportionment. So that's the difference between the 10 and then the 30. So Congress appropriates, OMB begins the process. I'm sure they send guidance and so forth first. The agencies have 10 days to submit the SF 132 apportionment document to request in their funds. Then OMB has 30 days to send the funds. What does OMB stand for?
Office of Management and Budget.
Office of Management and Budget. All right. So the Office of Management and Budget is doing this apportionment. So Congress appropriate, then all of a sudden this OMB shows up and begins portioning out the funds. Who does OMB work for?
President.
President.
The president or the executive branch. So president or executive branch, same thing. So OMB works for the executive branch. So that means the budget belongs to the president. When they submit it, belongs to the president. So here comes this new player, GAO. What does GAO stand for?
Government Accountability Office.
Government Accountability Office, and they work for whom?
Congress.
Congress.
They work for Congress. So Congress appropriate the funds. GAO works for Congress to monitor, to audit the president, to audit the executive branch, to audit the pres bud. So depending if you see it that way. So the budget is part of the executive branch. So that's why that structure where it says GAO, there's either a question or somewhere it says whether GAO monitors the executive branch or the president, because remember the flow of the budget request, the president's budget goes to Congress for approval. Once Congress approves it, goes back, hey, executive branch, this is what we're approving. Then the OMB steps in, go through the apportionment process. So once the Department of Defense gets their apportionment, what type of funding do they trickle down to the rest of us? What is it called?
An allotment.
It's called an allotment. So from any organization under the Department of Defense, you get an allotment. And then everyone else who gets the allotment, then everyone commits, which is an administrative reservation of funds. We set the funds aside. We're going to use it for this contract, for this travel. I see your hand, Miss Tina. Hold on.
No, I'm sorry, Miss Helen. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just got kicked out of Teams, so I think Teams might be on the fritz going into the afternoon, just to give you a heads up, because I got completely kicked out. But I
Oh,
was
okay.
able
You had to
get
come back in.
Yeah. I'm not sure about your dial-in, folks. Sometimes it happens with them as well. Sometimes it does. But just a heads up. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
Okay, no, it's fine. It's good to know. Yeah, make sure everybody can hear. All right, so what was I talking about since I was so cautiously?
You were
All right,
talking
well,
about commitments and the
commitments,
obligations after the
obligations. All right.
allotment.
All right, so we commit, we administrative, set the funds aside, obligate. You have that legal binding contract. So now you obligate the funds, and then what's the proper term for the CDFM? After we obligate the funds, once we receive the service, we got to pay for it. What is the term called? Let's see who pick it up.
Outlay?
The outlay, right? Which is the same thing as disbursement, but in the study guide, the formal term is an outlay. When the funds come out of the treasury now to pay the bill, that is action is called an outlay. All right, any question of me of anything so far? So I'm just kind of flipping through the knowledge check. All right, let's switch gears on. Finance, what are the functions of finance? Entitlements, payments, collections, control of public funds. So think of it, when on the finance side, you got to make sure people are entitled. Are you entitled to get separation allowance? Are you entitled to get housing allowance? Entitlement. Then we got to make sure we pay you for what you're entitled to. Then sometimes you owe the government, or you lose a gear and you got to pay for the gear. So we have to collect, and then we have to manage control of public funds, the flow of funds. We got to control entitlements, payments, collections, control of funds. Those are the four major functions of finance. Whenever you have a list of things, you need to know what they are, so that if they say which one is not a major function of finance, you'll be able to pull it out. So just look at it that way. Are they entitled? If they are entitled, pay them. If we overpay them, then we have to collect. And then we have to monitor, we gotta safeguard the public funds. So we gotta control the funds. What is the Department of Defense organization that's in charge of finance and accounting?
Fast.
DFAS, right? The Defense Finance and Accounting Service. I'm not going to ask you all this other one because it's part of module 2, but you also will learn from far as the plan, program, budget, and execution piece. In module 2, you learn who at the DoD is in charge of planning, programming, and then we just went over budget and execution piece, which is part of the finance and accounting. All right. So repeat, salary offsets. A lot of this stuff is repetitive if you're paying attention. All right. If today is, all right, let me write my question down so I can ask it. All right, you just received RDT&E funds. Today is 1 November 2022. When will these funds be closed? So the question or scenario, you just received RDT&E funding. Today's date is 1 November 2022. When will these funds be closed? I'll give you a few minutes. And don't forget, we operate on the fiscal years.
September 30th, 2023.
I don't know.
No? So
All right.
22 will be 1 year and 23 the other.
Okay, we're gonna go over it in a minute.
Okay.
Be FY 29.
Okay.
I
I'm
know.
doing mine too. FY 24, 20. Do we have any different answers? Let me double check mine. All right, we'll walk it through together and see how we arrive to that answer, to the correct answer. All right, so we have RDT&E funds. So we know those are good for new obligations for how many years?
2 years.
2 years, right? So, but we need to know what fiscal year we're in. If it's 1 November 2022, we are in what fiscal year?
23.
23.
Yes.
That's why
My
I did it
gosh,
that way.
that's
'Cause
what it
usually
got me. Yes.
people forget about October, November, December. It's the following year,
Yes.
right? So you got to know those two things. And the question is closed. So we're going to walk through it. So RDT&E funds, these funds, because it's FY23, it's good for FY23 and FY24. Then it's expired FY25, 26, 27, 28, 29, which means it's closed FY30. Does everyone see how we did that?
Yes.
So depending on the type of appropriation you're dealing with, so that's why I started off earlier with the timelines, that you are familiar with those, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, and then that additional 5 year, just think of fiscal year, and it's a full fiscal year. So most likely, again, I used to teach PPBE at Fort Jackson, and part of the test writing is what they trained us is to kind of think of the things that people don't normally think about, which is understanding the fiscal year. October, November, December of 1 year is actually the fiscal year that's included, which in this case, 1 November 2022 is fiscal year 23. So I just wanted to throw that one at you. All right. You good, Miss Soto?
Yes, I am.
Is it
I'm
Alina?
sorry. I need to put this.
That's all right. You're just showing us and make me want to reiterate the importance of, even when you sit down to take the test, that you read the question, read everything that's given to you, then read the question and see what it's asking you. Because the tendency is we pick the first response that looks right, but is it asking you for that particular question? So I just wanted to throw that out there. So you helped me prove my point. Thank you. But no, you did good. All right, so most of these, I'm looking at these other knowledge check. All right. What are the different types of accounting? So I'm switching gears. Let me switch my little question. Where we at? 12 o'clock. Different types of accounting. Anybody?
Well, there's budgetary accounting and proprietary accounting.
Okay, that's two. We got three of them. What's the third one? You got your leaders got to do some type of accounting. It's managerial cost accounting.
That's right. That's
right?
right.
Remember the third one. What are the different financial statements? Federal financial statements. Because you're going to have to calculate the balance sheet, statement of net cost, and the other one is just the statement of change in the net position. So the three types of financial statements are balance sheet, statement of net cost, and statement of change in net position. What's the formula for the balance sheet?
Hold on, I have it. Assets equals liabilities plus net position.
Say it one more time for me.
Assets equals liability
Okay.
plus net position.
Okay, so assets equal liability plus net position. So again, remember, if you memorize the chart of accounts, or your 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 numbers, it's already aligned for you to help you to remember the balance sheet formula. Assets equal, so the first number equals liabilities and net position. So we said we have budgetary accounting. What is the formula for budget recording the budget resources? Because all your budgetary numbers starts with a 4, I think, right? 4. Budgetary. All right, so budgetary accounting, your resources equals status of resources. And you need to know the formulas and the chart of accounts, because again, if you're given, they give you just numbers. You don't necessarily know if it's an asset, if it's a liability. Only how you will know is if you know that everything that starts with a 1 in front of it is an asset. Everything that starts with a 2 is a liability, starts with a 3, net position, a 4, budgetary, 5, revenues and financing resources, 6, expenses, 7, gains and losses, and 8, memorandum. So your budgetary accounting is resources equals status of resources. So all your 4s. So you need to know budgetary accounting formula and proprietary or financial accounting is your balance sheet, which is assets equal liability plus net position. And what is the formula for statement of net cost? Because you're also going to have to know that one. So that is your expenses minus your exchange revenue. Your 6,000 numbers minus your 5,000 numbers. So if they just give you a list of all bunch of numbers, everything that add up everything that starts with a 5, everything that starts with a 6, the 600 numbers total minus the 5, that is your net cost of operation. So they're probably not going to ask you for the formula. They're going to probably say, what is the net cost of operations? and just give you a bunch of numbers. What is the balance sheet? What's your total assets? So that's probably how you'll see that. In managerial cost accounting, you have your quick ratio and your current ratio. What is the difference between both of those? And what does it mean? What is the purpose of the current ratio? So your current ratio, and again, you want to have more assets than liability. You want to have more money, less bills. That's the norm. So your current ratio is your ability to pay your bills. So think about it on a personal level. Current ratio is how much income I have coming in and divided by the bills that I have to pay. I want to have more coming in, less going out. That is my current ratio. It shows my ability to pay my bills. So the DOD's goals for current ratio is a 2-to-1 or better. The quick ratio, which does not include, if I'm reading that correctly, inventory, does not include inventory. It measures your ability to liquidate your business. How fast can you do it? And it says quick ratio of 1-to-1 is best. So I can easily liquidate and pay things off. All right, I know what I'm missing. Auditing. All right. All right, what are the phases of an audit? So this is what I started off earlier to try to clarify some things. I think we went over most of these. Nobody works in audit or looked at the audit section? At least give me one. Planning. Audit, all right, you prepare for an audit, that means you have to plan, right? So your planning is phase 1. And I'm trying to go to the book first. So most of the feedback that I've been getting in reference to this question, hold on, the different phases is they're saying, oh, there's 4 phases of an audit. But if you look in the study guide, it referenced plan, review, and report, which looks like it's only 3 phases. But let me see something. 1, 2. What I've come to find out, and it doesn't directly state it in the book, is you plan, and in between planning for an audit and the review actually happening is you're actually doing internal control. Remember, audit is an external organization coming in to evaluate you. Internal control are those steps and things that you do to ensure that you're in compliance. So when they say 4 phases, it's plan, internal control, review, and report. Again, the book mentions 3 phases, but there's actually 4. It's one of those, what they says, unspoken. But when you see it again, they're not saying 3, they're asking for 4. So if you're asked for 4, it's plan, internal control, review, and report. Because you're not gonna just, you know that they're coming to do an audit. You're not just gonna sit and wait for them to come in and do the audit. You're gonna actually do your own internal control. You're gonna make sure that you have the right SOPs, policies, memorandums, appointment letters, and all of that stuff before they come in to do the review. Are there any questions on that? Just wanted to clarify that. So that's why you may see it again and it's going to say 4 phases. All right, so no questions? All right. And so we talked about the Government Accountability Office being an external auditing agency that works directly for Congress. The GAO publishes 3 books, the GAO Red Book, Yellow Book, and Green Book. What is covered in the Red Book? Think of a stoplight again when you're trying to associate and remember. Says FASAB. All right. The Red Book deals with appropriation. The Yellow Book deals with what?
Auditing.
Auditing.
Auditing, and internal control is the Green Book. Right? And it's mentioned, I think internal control is only mentioned at the very last page of that auditing. And it says the GAO Green Book. Red, yellow, green, appropriation, auditing, internal control. Now, there was one other, I think it's accounting. Let me see something. All right. So I'll stand by if y'all have any other questions, because I think I might end it here for today. I'm trying to see, I wrote some notes here. Revolving funds. Okay, so we talked about revolving funds, working capital funds, no-year funds, all of that is the same thing. And I think we'll talk about that. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. What are the ways in which you can close a no-year fund? So they don't have the typical, okay, end date, because remember it's revolving, it's a no-year fund, but there's some instances where they can close. What are the scenarios in which you can close no-year funds? Let me highlight that one. All right, so number 1, the agency head or the president have determined that the purpose of the appropriation have been carried out, meaning they no longer need that service. And 2, no disbursement has been made against that appropriation for 2 consecutive fiscal years. So you can close a no-year fund or a revolving fund or a working capital fund. You can close it if the agency head or the president says that the purpose is no longer needed, or they have no disbursement for 2 consecutive years. What 31 U.S. code governs purpose? 31 U.S. code for purpose.
31, US Code 1301.
1301, time?
1502.
1502, and amount? So amount is 1341, 1342, and 1517. What does 1341 say? Because now you got 3 different ones for amount. What does 1341 talk about? So 1341 talks about not violating appropriation. You can't spend appropriation before you get it or in excess of what you received. What about 1342? Under amount, 31 U.S. Code 1342 talks about what?
Accepting volunteering services.
Voluntary services. Can we accept voluntary services from anyone?
There's certain
No.
organizations.
Okay, so you have exceptions, but typically
No, yeah.
no. But let's dig a little bit deeper into that no. That no means that that position must be governed by law to be a paid position. Again, back to my example, if this is a GS-12, that person left, and you have an individual wants to come in and you know what, you don't even have to pay me. I want to keep my skills up. Can I volunteer to work as a GS-12? I'll help you guys out until you hire someone. No, in that case, because it's a paid position, you cannot, and you cannot put that salary down to zero. We don't have that leeway, so you cannot accept voluntary services. What about 1517? 31 US Code 1517 deals with violating what type of funding? You cannot spend apportionment before you get it or in excess of what you receive. So 3141 addresses appropriation, which Congress appropriates, and 1517 deals with apportionment. OMB apportions funds. So that means it's between OMB and the Department of Defense and the other agencies that can violate 1517. So yes, if we do it at our level, it's still bad because it looks bad on the DOD if they can't cover it. Because we have allotment, and if you look through all of these US codes, there's nothing that really addresses allotment. But again, allotment is where DOD, we're spending DOD's money or DOD's apportionment. What is the reporting requirement if you identify an ADA violation? Based on the 2020 book, ADA violation. Once you identify the violation, how long do you have to report it?
10 days.
You have 10 days from identifying, and then how long to complete the preliminary review? If I got it. Yep. 10 days of discovery and purpose terminal amount. I want to make sure I read it. I always mess this up. I think it's like 14 weeks. I'm just turning to that page. So it says, so 10 days, actually it says 2 weeks. So it's either 10 days or 2 weeks. The newer books say 2 weeks from discovery and must be completed within 4 months from the date of initial discovery. 2 weeks and 4 months. What are the penalties for ADA violation? Either administrative penalty. Go ahead, sir.
I was going to ask if you could repeat the question.
Okay, what are the penalties for ADA violation?
A fine and isn't it imprisonment? Depending on the
Right, so
amount.
those are the criminal penalties. So you can have administrative penalty. So it's more of retraining. Maybe I move you to a different position, administrative, or the penalty can be a criminal penalty, which is a $5,000 fine or 2 years imprisonment, or both. So either or both. Just scanning. What does DSSN stand for? It is the dispersing station. Let me make sure I said it's service number, station symbol number. Dispersing station symbol number, basically the paying office that's making that payment. So it identifies them with the Treasury. So DSSN. What does 210 net 30 mean on a contract? 210 net 30. So that's a 2/10 net NET 30. That means if you pay the bill within 10 days, you can take a 2% discount. Otherwise, you pay the rest in 30 days, the full amount in 30 days. So 210, 2/10, take a 2% discount if you pay your bill within 10 days. If not, you pay all of it in 30 days, which is your net 30. Let's yeah, let's see. Okay, so I think I'm gonna end the session for today here. And then next week we'll go into, I'm gonna look through for some other questions that I didn't cover today, or some of my frequently asked questions that I've been capturing on my little notes here. All right, any question on anything we've covered today or in the past, or maybe a concept you want me to try and explain, or I can get back with you on it? All right, if not, we're going to end the review for CDFM Module 3 today, and then we'll finish up next week. So I'll bring in some more tools, some more questions and so forth that I have, and try to get you to understand the concept. Again, you got to look for information from different angles. Study for comprehension, understanding what is going on, who is doing it, why are they doing it, when are they doing it, and what is the end result of what they're doing. So it's kind of like reading a novel and understanding that who done it. You're trying to figure that piece of it out, because on the exam, you're given scenarios. As I tell people, it's not going to be straightforward. It's going to be scenarios. And based on your knowledge of the information, then you'll be able to see that. Yes, ma'am. Do you have a question, Miss Alina?
I know, I'm sorry. No.
Oh, okay. All right. If no one have any question, this is Helen Thomas and the CDFM study group. I thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll see you guys again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Y'all
you.
have a great day. Don't forget to review the material, please. It gets easier as you review it more and more. And stop the recording.